Our four-step system is relevant in the preparation of brand new skis, which need to be tuned for optimal fun and performance. Step 1 is base edge preparation.
It's important to start with a perfectly clean and wax-free base. If necessary, use a soft steel or brass brush either by hand or roto. Then wipe off the debris. Use a true bar to evaluate the base and base edges. It gives you accurate and vital information about the flatness of your base and the consistency of your current base edge bevel. Place the true bar on the base and evaluate in sections approximately 10 centimeters apart. This will make it very clear if your ski is concave, convex, or appropriately flat with the correct base edge bevel for the respective skier. Another method of evaluation is to take your true bar and rub it lightly back and forth to determine if there is any drag or friction from the steel edges on the true bar. This drag pinpoints the high spots on the edges. Mark all areas that are grabby so you can correct them. This technique reveals if any high or low spots exist on the base of the ski. With new skis, pay more attention to the tips and tails where the steel edges are commonly higher than the body of the ski and scored from the grinding machines. For the majority of skiers, it's common to apply slightly more base edge bevel to the tips and tails to assist in easier turn execution. However, some newly ground skis can be edge high throughout their length, which may drastically impact both ski performance and skill development. In these situations, you will need to correct this either by hand or machine. The most commonly used base bevel increments are 0.5, 0.7, and 1 degree. Insert either your 200 or 250 mm base edge file into the base bevel guide. Be sure the half moon portion of the guide meets the sidewall. This becomes your guide as it glides along the sidewall of the ski. This thickness determines the amount of bevel and slides down the center of the base. Remember that files are designed to cut in one direction, on the pull stroke, not the backstroke. One technique is to slightly lift the file on the backstroke, keeping the guide and the file steady as to not mark the base. Then set the file and guide on the ski and with very light pressure, draw it towards you, feeling the file cutting the steel. Moving the file every 2 to 3 passes in approximately 1 centimeter increments will prevent the file clogging up with metal. It's crucial to keep the file and base clear of debris. Remember to apply this same technique to any other high spots on the base you may have encountered on the previously marked edge. Finish with one light pass, confirming your work is smooth and even, ensuring very little or no resistance from the file. If you don't feel the file cutting the steel, then some causes include a worn out file, the technique needs adjustment, or the base bevel on the ski is already greater than the base edge guide being used. Next, spray your edge with your premixed distilled water and isopropanol solution. You may also choose to use your stones dry. Using them lubricated is helpful in preventing the stones from loading with metal debris. It also improves the cutting characteristics of the stones, resulting in higher polish and smoother finish of the edges. We're working in the following sequence: a 400 grit diamond stone first, then 600, then 1000. Unlike a file which cuts in one direction, stones work in both directions, using both the push and pull technique. Be certain to keep your hands beneath you to create consistent downward pressure, as opposed to using a long range of motion with your arms outstretched, which may make it more difficult to maintain even pressure. Go back and forth to get started, then take some long passes moving your feet from tip to tail and tail to tip to prevent an uneven or wavy edge. Be certain the steel edges are consistent in color, brightly polished, ultra smooth and free of markings from filing. Take a look before and after with the loop for visual confirmation. Once this work has been completed on the base edges, it's not required to file them again since the steel has been adjusted to your preferred degree of bevel. Only touch them up if damaged, in need of polishing or deburring, shown in step 3. Choosing the appropriate bevel is established by one's strength, skill level, and skier discipline, but ultimately it's experimentation based on what feels best to you or is the fastest.
Step 2. Top sheet and sidewall preparation.
New skis are often very square in the tips and tails, which can interfere with your ability to apply the correct side edge bevel. Demonstrating with the true bar, you can see this. Without adjusting this profile, it's difficult to file correctly due to insufficient clearance, as you can see here. To shape the top sheet, use a body file applying even consistent pressure with your passes, ensuring you're rolling the file away from the edge. You can use a combination of your 250mm cut 12 file, gripping the file as follows. And with your elbow tight to your side, apply these wiper type passes. This will remove the majority of the material quickly, and then switch to your finer 200mm cut 17 file to shape it exactly how you desire. The file pressure you use is dependent on the hardness of the material you're working with. Be certain to create enough clearance so that your file or stone on the guide is contacting only the steel edge and not loading up with top sheet materials. Here's an example where the top sheet has been blended into the sidewall. You can see the angle quite clearly versus this ski which has not been done yet. Then I blend it with fine sandpaper to make the sidewall and top sheet ultra smooth. This is the sidewall of the ski. This is what we call the sidewall step and in need of removal. And beside this is a hard layer of aluminum alloy found on many skis but not all. Next to this is the steel edge that we want to sharpen to the skier's preferred degree of bevel. The reason we remove the sidewall step and often some of the aluminum alloy is because it interferes with the file's ability to contact the steel edge, thereby making it impossible to sharpen the side edge on the desired bevel. For example, this guide is machined precisely to a 2-degree angle. Once the file is clamped on it, it's easy to recognize that you'll not be successful in contacting the steel edge since it's interfered with by this step. Therefore, we remove some or all of it, depending on the skier's preference, so we can effectively bevel the edge. In this instance, we not only feel that it's not cutting the steel, but can also see that the file is loaded with black sidewall material. The sidewall materials used on skis vary greatly, not only amongst different manufacturers, but also between junior and adult skis. Round and square cutters come in different grades and sharpness, and characteristically work differently. Therefore, choosing the correct cutter is essential. Round cutters are typically better for sandwich construction skis, like this one, whereas square cutters are typically better for cap construction skis. Here's an example of a sandwich ski done with a round cutter versus one that's been done with a square cutter. When removing the sidewall, place the stainless steel glide plate on the base of the ski. Set the roller bearing on the edge, keeping the tool parallel to the edge. Insert the pin standing behind the tool. Steady the pin with half of your thumb on the aluminum block and half on the pin to prevent it from moving. Then on your first adjustment, ensure the cutter is just touching the black sidewall step. Next, adjust your rake anywhere between 10 and 40 degrees. You'll need to experiment, however a slight twist most often works perfectly. Next, tighten the screw. Some key tips when using the sidewall remover are as follows. Get the locator pin adjusted accurately on the first pass so that it's removing the step. If it isn't, for instance the cutter is hitting the edge, then simply stop and readjust. The tension of your grip should be medium to firm. However, the downward pressure on the sidewall with the cutter should be very light initially. Once the curl starts, you can increase your downward pressure and then ease up again at the opposite end of the ski to prevent it from biting in the thinner sections of the tips and tails, which may cause some chattering. Keep your tool underneath you and keep the feed and speed of your tool consistent by moving with it. You'll notice my left hand always stays on the ski or on the tool for improved accuracy and balance. Depending on the type of sidewall material, long even passes without stopping, allowing the tool to do the work, most often deliver the best results. Use of the tool in sections or a stop-start approach can create tiny grooves in the sidewall that may grow into severe chatter marks upon subsequent passes. Remember, chatter is caused by incorrect setup, too much force, or the wrong cutter. Therefore, take your time to figure out what works best on different skis. After you have created clearance for both files and stones in relation to the top sheet and the sidewall, you may still encounter problems filing due to slippage. You may solve this by adjusting the sidewall tool to remove a little of the aluminum alloy layer mentioned earlier. Spring-like steel strands indicate you are removing it correctly. As before, if you're hitting the steel edge, simply stop and readjust. Lastly, if speed is important, spend some valuable time blending the work done on the top sheets and sidewalls by sanding and polishing them with the goal of making them fast. Simply wrap 220 or finer grit sandpaper or Fibertex around your file or true bar and sand until smooth, removing all imperfections. To sand out the slight concave, use either the natural curvature in your thumb or use a dowel pin.
Step 3. Side edge preparation and polishing.
Examine your new edges closely, paying particular attention to the tips and tails where the machine grinding stone is more likely to leave case-hardened areas caused from the heat. Take note of how the striations as well as the tone and color of the steel differ. Next is to prepare this factory ground edge for filing. Use a diamond guide with a 120 or 200 grit disc, dry in this case, to open the hardened steel, making it far easier to file. Start at either the tip or tail right around the curve and work the disc back and forth, giving it a slight turn whenever it loads excessively with metal debris from the edge. It's a good idea to always polish the face of your diamond or file guides with a Fibertex pad prior to placing it on your base. Remember, whatever is on the face of your guide will undesirably transpose to your base. Fastening the file to the guide is simple. Slide the file in until it touches the screw and adjust it so it's on a slight angle with the arrow facing toward you. Then tighten the thumb screw. Next, place your forefinger on the trigger and your thumb on the clamp. Since this is a new ski, we're choosing a more aggressive cut 10 or cut 14 file. Cut 10 files are predominantly used for brand new skis or ones that have recently been done by machine. Cut 14 files are our most popular file and for general everyday use. Cut 15 and 16 files are used for finer filing and skis that are tuned often. It's important to start right around the curve of the tip or tail, and with light to medium pressure, take slow, even passes, ensuring your guide is running absolutely true on the base of the ski. It's normal to have some resistance initially due to the hardness of the new edge. However, after a few passes, the steel will soften and file easily. Clean the ski often and file until all markings have been removed across the entire width of the edge, confirming you've set an accurate bevel. Remember to consistently clear the teeth of your file following its groove pattern. 120 and 200 grit stones are used for removing heavier burrs and sharpening skis that aren't too far out of acuteness. 400 grit stones are used for both sharpening and polishing, whereas 600 and 1000 are for polishing and ultrafine polishing. Next is to polish the edges. Use either the same alcohol-water mixture as before or oil to lubricate the edge. We prefer to use oil on side edges only. Then choose either a diamond guide or a file guide. If you're using the alcohol mixture, spray the liquid on the stone and wipe the guide. Using oil, put a tiny drop about every 5 to 10 centimeters along the edge. Then in one light pass, spread with your finger. Add a drop to the diamond and work the oil back and forth until a slippery grayish paste is formed, contributing to an ultrafine polish. Moving from the 400 to 600, you'll notice the resistance and the sound both lessening. Notice the sound difference here versus here where it hasn't been polished. Lastly, if desired, finish with a 1000 grit diamond for even finer polishing, and be certain you take some long passes with even pressure to prevent a wavy edge. Wipe as many times as necessary until clean, and finally, looking closely at the edge, you should notice a nice even uniform color across its entire width and length. Although very rewarding, tuning can be very time consuming. Therefore, we find it easier to dedicate files to their file guides, which are used dry, and diamond discs to their diamond guides, which are often used with lubrication. This saves a noticeable amount of changeover and cleaning time. Also, we can only slightly adjust the rectangular stone on the file guide. You can see it creates a linear wear pattern, making it difficult to utilize the entirety of the diamond. However, it's easy to see with the disc. I can constantly turn it when it gets loaded with debris, making it far more efficient. Cleaning your diamonds immediately after your session will drastically increase their longevity. Using oil instead of water is our suggested method. Only use a tiny drop, otherwise you may affect the adhesion of the replaceable diamond on its backing plate. Smear it around with your finger to lift the dirt and rub vigorously on a coarse towel. Then flip it over and let it dry diamond side up. Just like files, diamond stones wear out after thousands of passes. When they do, just remove the diamond strip, clean the backing plate with alcohol and replace it. After side edge filing, you can often feel a little hanging burr with your fingernail. To remove this, use either a 600 or 1000 grit diamond or green gummy. Position the stone on the base with a slight angle and tip it to meet the bevel of the edge. Touching the diamond to the edge is a very subtle move. Now using your thumb and forefinger, take a very light, accurate pass to remove the microburr. If you're not comfortable doing this freehand, simply use the appropriate base bevel guide. Running your finger lightly on the edge, it should feel perfectly smooth and burr-free. Detuning is a personal preference. If you prefer to take the aggressiveness away from the edge, use your green gummy on the apex of the edge with 2 to 3 light passes. If you prefer to detune the tips and tails, use the harder blue gummy, which more rapidly removes the acuteness of the edge. Using a loop to inspect your work is a great way to improve your tuning and train your eye to notice the subtle changes you've made to the edges.
Step 4. Base preparation and waxing.
Wipe the base, then scrape with 2 or more passes as necessary. Inspect to see if you have any microhairs present. If you do, it's critical to remove them to minimize friction and allowing the bases to run fast. To help extract these microhairs from the structure, wrap Fibertex around your true bar and take passes back and forth, finishing with 1 long pass tip to tail. End with a smooth, sharp scraper, knocking all the fibers back in the direction of glide. Brush with a brass or soft steel, either by hand or roto brush, from tip to tail. If using a soft steel or brass roto brush, be sure to wear safety glasses and set the drill on the slower speed setting, applying light pressure. Wipe clean. Using a finer horsehair brush may be required to further extract microhairs prior to waxing. Wipe the base clean, and again, if needed, use your isopropanol and water mixture to remove the microdust. Apply tape to where the binding and plate are to prevent wax overflow on these areas. You may choose to rub a thin layer of wax on first. This helps the wax disperse easier when you contact it with a hot iron, preventing burning the base, and can also save wax. Preheat the iron to the respective wax manufacturer's specifications. In this case, with Nanox, set your iron to approximately 140 degrees Celsius. Clean the iron, then melt and drip a generous amount of wax onto the base. Next, holding your cord out of the way, melt the wax into your base. We like to start at the tail and go to the tip and return back to the tail. Be sure to keep the iron moving so you don't burn the base, and look for a 5 to 10 centimeter melted trail behind the iron. Be certain to always use sharp, straight scrapers without any nicks. Dull and uneven scrapers will both scratch and affect the trueness of your base and take more time to remove the wax. Remove the tape and tighten the center vise. Use the notch in the scraper to remove all wax from the edges. Brush away wax. If needed, put the ski on its side to remove the wax from the edge and sidewall. Wipe clean and use Fibertex to remove stubborn wax from the sidewall. When scraping, place both thumbs on the scraper and push with even pressure, removing the wax from tip to tail. Scrape Nanox from the base within 1 to 2 minutes or still slightly warm. Avoid both over-scraping and flexing thinner scrapers, otherwise you may unnecessarily remove base material. Next, remove Nanox wax with your nylon brush only. If you choose to roto, set the speed high and use low force, or set the speed low and use medium force. Now go back and forth with the roto, finishing with 1 smooth, steady pass to the tail, ensuring the roto is contacting the entire width of the base. Wipe clean. Always finish brushing Nanox with a nylon hand brush as follows, and then finally scrubbing back and forth. And lastly, a tip to tail pass to knock all the fibers back down. This will give you a nice sheen and allow the meltwater to flow through the structure on snow. Wipe clean to remove dust. Store your brushes separately to keep them clean and free from cross-contamination, especially if you have different brushes for cleaning and after waxing. Using Nanox CFX2 race wax is identical in application and removal, except that the iron is set between 150 and 160 degrees Celsius. Last of all, use a minimum of 3 straps to transport your skis and protect your work. To learn more about Nanox, refer to our How to Use Nanox Ski and Board wax video.